Hello and namaste, everyone. This is Karunya Richard, Support Executive at the Institute of Inspiring Innovation. Hope you're staying safe and keeping a check on COVID. We all know the precautionary measures like take care if you're elderly, avoid exposure, wash hands or use alcohol-based sanitizers, avoid touching your face, stay healthy, exercise regularly, keep all helpline numbers handy. Now, let's watch a video of Ondu Corona Kate.
ಅಂಕಲ್ ಒಂದು ಕೊರೋನಾ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಹೇಳಿ.
ಬನ್ನಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಒಂದು ಕರೋನಾ ಕಥೆನ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಈ ಕರೋನಾ ಕಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಹಂತಗಳು. ಮೊದಲನೇ ಹಂತ, ಒಂದಾನೊಂದು ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೋನಾ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಫೇಮಸ್ ಚಪ್ಪಲಿ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದ್ ಜನ ಚಪ್ಪಲಿ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಓಡಾಡೋದು.
ಹೌದಾ?
ಒಂದು ವರ್ಷ ಬಂತು 2020 ಅಂತ. ಭಯಂಕರವಾದ ಒಂದು ವೈರಸ್, ಕರೋನಾ ವೈರಸ್ ಬಂತು. ಡಂಡ 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 ಅಂತ ಕರೋನಾ ಬಂತು. ಬಾಗ್ಲಾಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
ಮತ್ತೆ
ಎರಡನೇ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರು ಸಿಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದಾಗ ಅವನು ಕೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಅವನ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತ, ನಿನಗೆ ಕರೋನಾ ಬಂದಿಲ್ವಾ? ನನಗ್ ಬಂದು ಆಯ್ತಪ್ಪ, ನಾನು ಕರೋನಾ ಸರ್ವೈವರ್. ಮೂರನೇ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರು ನಿಮ್ ತರ ಜೊತೆ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವಾಗ ಸಡನ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ನಿನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ನಮ್ ತಾತ ಅವಾಗ ಕರೋನಾ ವಾರಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರು, ಅವರು ಡಾಕ್ಟ್ರು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿ ಬೇರೆ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ಅವಾಗ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ನಿಮ್ ತಾತನ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದು ನನ್ ತಾತನ್ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ. ನನ್ ತಾತನು ಕರೋನಾ ವಾರಿಯರ್, ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ಆ ಚಪ್ಪಲಿ ಕತೆನಾ, ಅದು ನಿಧಾನವಾಗಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನೀವು ಹೋಗಿ ಮಲ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಇವಾಗ ಲೇಟ್ ಆಯ್ತು.
Thank you, uncle.
I hope you all enjoyed watching this Corona story, while we could offer some time for other participants to join the session. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on Innovation Insights webinar series, where we bring thought leaders and subject matter experts to the spotlight for sharing their knowledge gained through their innovation journeys. Today's topic is COVID-19 defense technology. We will have a 40-minute session followed by a Q&A. If you have any questions during the presentation, I request you all to type them into the chat box. We'll bring them up in the end. Now, let's invite Naveen Lakur, our Chief Innovation Coach at Institute of Inspiring Innovation, to introduce today's speaker. With you, sir.
Thank you, Karunya, and thanks for playing that little story of Corona. I think we are all entering almost the second phase of it, right? First phase is all lockdown, and now we are it's knocking for opening doors, and the survivor numbers are increasing, and it should. And then the future, when people will look back and say, here is an history, and we were all part of it, So we are in that phase. I hope I'm audible. Am I? Just wanted to check.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you. Today it's a privilege for me to introduce Narayanan Krishnan, an innovator, a serial innovator. And I have to tell you, if I have to introduce him, the best is narrating a personal experience and a story, how I got introduced to him. I got a call one day and from a friend, and he said, there's one very interesting gentleman who's come from Australia. He's an Indian origin man, come from Australia. Great techie. He would like to meet, and I've referred your name, and he's an innovator, interesting person. Would you like to meet? I said, okay, if you're saying I should definitely meet. And we met in a coffee day, had a good coffee and interaction. And during that time, I started getting to know him. and understood that he's a marathon runner, fitness freak, and somebody who has very good habits, and those kind of things, and then he started talking about his inventions. He comes from internet security background and technology background, working with IBM and several large enterprises, with enterprise size of systems being developed. So I was very impressed getting to know. And then I asked him, what is your latest invention or innovation that you are a part of? Then he spoke about one of the device that he's just then completed creating. And he said, this device, little device, is something that, and also pairs with the Fitbit, and it'll tell you if somebody is going to get an heart attack much in advance. It'll tell you that they're going to go get an heart attack. So I said, oh wow. And so that platinum period, which can save a life, because once the heart attack happens, the permanent damage is there for the heart. Even though they might recover and have a healthy life later, but there is a damage for sure. So that can be prevented or reduced to a great extent. Maybe life can be saved, So I said, is it true? Does it work? When I asked that question, does it work? He started unbuttoning his shirt. So I was wondering, why is he unbuttoning? Then we are in coffee day and he started to open his shirt. And but I was curious to know what's happening. Then he showed a scar on his chest and said, it works, right? This device. Then he said, when he was trying and testing it, suddenly started beeping. And he started wondering, what's happening? Is it because my heart needs an attention, or is the system is not functioning the way it should? He thought, he's a fitness freak and very good habits only. And, there's no way that he will have a heart problem. But still, he said, let me drive. This was in Australia. He drove to a hospital, big hospital, and, went there and said, what, I just came here, wanted to know if my heart is fine. Can you test it? So they tested and they said immediately surgery is required. 95% of blockage is there and you need immediate surgery. Otherwise, you would have a heart attack, massive one. So the proof of the pudding was his own heart. And in fact, when he shared this story, it touched my heart. And then I realized what kind of an innovation and even invention that he's made, and wanting that to be used to save many lives, thousands of lives, millions of lives, if possible, and touch many hearts. That was his goal. And then he went on to make it available in India, even for the rural population. No wonder he got recognized for Make in India. And even though he lived in Australia and so on, so he's creating a phenomenal impact in India. And it's got a big heart. So with that, I have to call him onto the screen and give him the spotlight. I'm sure he has many things to share about COVID and digital technology that he can use. And I'm also curious to know and learn what he would have created and how it's going to be helping as a defense technology for COVID-19. COVID-19 has invaded, and here is somebody who is going to talk about how we can defend and what is his weapon for that. No idea. It's all exciting for us to learn. If there is anything to defend COVID-19, all of us are ready. Over to you, Narayanan. Please share. And we would like to learn and carry many insights from your session today.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Before we start, Om Sai Ram. So, I was actually going back in time as you were describing that interaction of ours. I was going back in time and I realized that it's been a couple of years now that we kind of met. But without taking much of time in going into the past, let's see what we can do in the next 35, 40 minutes. And I've got a 4-point agenda. The first one is trying to understand what is COVID-19. Because once we understand COVID-19, we should be able to draft our defense technology around it. The second part is, why do we care? This is most important because
Narayanan, whenever you want me to show the screen, let me know. I will share the screen.
perfect. So the why do we care?
Should I now?
No, I'll tell you. The why do we care is important because there is so much of mumbo jumbo around COVID-19, media, so-called experts. The WHO itself has done at least 25 U-turns in the last 6 months. They say one statement, after a month or two, they turn the clock back and say, no, that statement was incorrect. This is a new statement and so on. Essentially, the first 3 months, everyone was groping in the dark. And because of that, and also because of other factors, we have been committing very common schoolboy mistakes. We'll look at what those schoolboy mistakes are, and finally, we'll see how we can stay safe, how we can defend ourselves, our family members, and the people we like, we love, to be able to stay safe, even if we get infected, because we will get infected. Even if we get infected, how fast we can get out of that infection and recover. We can move on to the next slide, please. So the next slide, please. Sorry. What is important for today is I'm trying to represent a very simplified view of the situation. Very simplified in the sense I don't want any technology jargons or medical terms. If I can avoid them, I would avoid. While maintaining these two important points, I want to be as scientifically accurate as possible, and I try and give common man examples so that it is easy for us to understand. I believe that there are people who come from multiple facets of life and not all of them understand medical terms in an equal manner. Therefore, it is important that I make it simple so it is easy to understand. Primarily because there is a wealth of misleading information on the topic. Almost everyone who uses WhatsApp is a graduate from the WhatsApp University and provides intelligent, the way they describe it, analysis on what is COVID and what should be done. I'm open for recommendations because people here on this forum and even later on, people would be much more qualified, much more experienced and much more knowledgeable than me, at least in the medical side of the world. As Naveen sir said, I come predominantly from an IT or a data analysis background. So I look at data, I analyze the data, and therefore I come up with solutions. When I say I am only one part of that team. I've got a team of approximately 42 people, which include hardware and technology experts, application developers, doctors, physiotherapists, and data scientists. So I'm just happy and blessed to have a team for doing most of the work. Moving on to the next slide, please. So when we look at COVID, and please let me know if I'm going too slow or too fast, and I will modulate my speed accordingly. When we look at COVID, the primary parts that the COVID infects, apart from the throat, is the lungs and the heart. And the reason I say that is the lungs and the heart have something which is known as a ACE receptor, angiotensin, and so on. So let's not worry about that. So typically, when the lungs get infected, the inner section of the lungs get coated with a membrane, and this reduces the amount of space in the lungs, and therefore the efficacy or the amount of oxygen that can be taken in and given to the lungs. Imagine you have a room and suddenly you start dumping a lot of furniture in the room. The amount of space available for us to walk around is limited. Our efficiency is low. Our speed is slow. This is what happens to the lungs. Imagine the COVID virus coming with a truckload of furniture and dumping it into your lungs. Now, what the COVID virus particularly does, the protein in the virus, once it gets attached to the body, is it acts as a medicine that lowers blood pressure. So when that happens, typically the performance of the heart becomes sluggish. People tend to become more drowsy. People tend to become lethargic. And about 1 in 5 or 20% of people experience low blood pressure and severe arrhythmia. I consider myself a micro mini expert on arrhythmia, and the arrhythmia, a condition of arrhythmia is essentially important to understand because that leads to a variety of diseases of the heart. So everything that we know about the heart and we know about problems of the heart eventually starts from the arrhythmia. And this is what most cardiologists start by treating the patient with. The other parts of the body which get impacted are the brain, pancreas, intestines, and the kidney. Partly because the flow of blood is important for all these organs. And if the flow of blood is weak because of less oxygen, all these organs definitely will get impacted. We'll see what the progression of COVID-19 is within the body in the next slide. This is something that almost everyone knows by now. The entry point or the first contact are the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. These are because these three parts have fluids which flow within the body. You can't get infected with your nails, you can't get infected with the skin or any other part of the body or even the hair because they don't directly enter into the fluid system of the body. But the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, they tend to have a decent circulation of fluids. Whether it's the nose or the mouth, the pathogen or the virus, they go and settle into the throat. So let us assume that this is day 0 when we have the first contact. Between day 2 and day 5, the virus has started building a colony in the throat. They typically grow to about 100,000% from what they were at the lips or at the tongue. Now this is important to understand because that growth, that colonization, if stopped at that point, is the best defense against the coronavirus. So as a practice, jumping the gun slightly, as a practice, if we go out on any single day or every day that we go out, after we come back home, we should do gargling or steaming or drink a couple of glasses of hot water every 3 hours once we are back home. That ensures that the colonization does not take place in the throat. The moment you can stop the colonization and always keep it at day 0, we don't have anything to worry. Now, in case we don't do it or we have not done it, from the throat using the windpipe, these viruses start slipping down into the lungs. Another set of colonization happens within the lungs because these virus elements, they multiply quickly. They colonize inside the lungs and form the layer. As the layers start forming, the oxygen saturation or the SpO2 value in the body starts diminishing. It goes unnoticed because from 100 to 97, which is the normal range, we are living a normal life. From 97 to, let's say, 90, depending on how healthy the person is, you experience some fatigue, but you always blame it on maybe I've put on a bit of weight, maybe I've not been exercising that often, so I need to really start going to the gym. But I can't go to the gym now, lockdown and all that. And you start working on those lines. You just don't think that it is a possible infection. Now, over a period of time, the percentage of SpO2 drops from 95 to 90 and then down to 85. That is the time the body screams for oxygen and you need to be supplemented with artificial air, artificial oxygen. You either get a ventilator, which gives you air, or you get an oxygen cylinder, which gives you oxygen, clear, pure oxygen, nothing else. Ventilators are cheaper, oxygen cylinders, easy to guess, they are costlier, and therefore the cost of treatment also goes up. This typically happens between day 2 to 15. The reason it happens between 2 to 15 is because different people have different existing conditions. Somebody with pulmonary fibrosis, they will go down quickly. Their health will deteriorate as quickly as a few hours. But somebody who is really healthy, been into sports or athletics or running or something for a while, it will probably take about 15 days for them to start getting serious. Now, if left untreated, I repeat, if left untreated, every other organ can and does get impacted. They get infected too. The brain gets infected, people become slow in response, their motor functions become slower. Pancreas, so people with an existing condition of diabetes, they could experience sudden changes or fluctuations, whether it is increase in diabetes, blood sugar, or a massive decrease or a dip in their blood sugar numbers. What is important to know is the weakest link in the chain. So if it's a cardiovascular patient, the heart will get impacted first. If the person has diabetes, the pancreas will get impacted first. If the person has had diabetes for quite some time and the kidney is weak, then the kidneys would get infected first, and so on. So it's important, and this is the very reason for this slide is to identify if and when the first contact happens and before the colonization takes place, can we in some form or manner stop the infection from spreading beyond that. We move on to the next slide. Now, I have a small YouTube video. Naveen, sir, would you like to click it, please? The link is clickable.
Doesn't seem to be a clickable one.
Okay. So what the ignore. I'll I'll explain what it is. It is purely passengers at a railway station waiting for the train to come and boarding the train. As simple as that. So when we look at the railway station, there are passengers who are queuing up on the station platform. The train arrives. This is the very first station on the route for the train. It arrives empty, the doors open. Passengers board the train. That depends on how long the doors stay open, which is dependent on how frequently the train arrives. So if the train arrives every 3 minutes, then the doors open for quite a long time. If the train arrives every 1 minute, the doors close very fast so that the train has to move on. The train leaves as soon as the doors close, regardless of how many people get in. Now assume that the doors start closing quickly. So fewer passengers get to board the train, and therefore fewer passengers alight. A percentage of the passengers inside the train get off at the first station, the second station, and so on. Let us assume there are 10 stations and 10% of all passengers get off. If earlier we were able to accommodate 100 people boarding the train and 10 people were getting off at every platform, now only 10 people are boarding the train, therefore only one person gets off the train at every station. Fewer passengers board, fewer passengers alight, and this causes a queue of people on the station, on the starting station. Moving on to the next slide, sir. For a minute, imagine that this station is the lung. Individual passengers are oxygen atoms, and each train is a single breath with a single heartbeat. So there is a heartbeat of a train of oxygen, a train of blood cells come into the station. Oxygen goes into the blood cells. It goes back to the heart, and the heart sends the blood on to the rest of the body. Now suddenly, there is less amount of oxygen that can go into the platform, less amount of oxygen that can go into the blood, and therefore less amount of oxygen that reaches the individual parts. The hands, the legs, the brain, the kidney, every part of the body starts getting less oxygen. Because they are getting less oxygen, it leads to two things. One is fatigue, the other is pain. You will connect with this when I give you an example. You are climbing a flight of stairs. The first thing you feel is breathlessness. As soon as you finish breathlessness and you continue climbing upstairs, you start feeling tired. You somehow ignore the feeling of tired part, and then you continue climbing. Your thighs, particularly your thighs and calves, they initially start to hurt. This is typically the impact of less oxygen reaching the legs. If you're lifting weights, the same thing would happen to your hands. I'm very consciously referring the peripheral limbs because the impact is felt very hard there. Now, because they do not get enough oxygen, suddenly they're asking for more oxygen or more blood. They don't know. They're just saying, I want more, I want more. And because the first point of contact for them is the heart starts beating faster, the number of heartbeats per minute rises, and the cycle repeats itself, spiraling out of control. As it spirals out of control, people get into that stage of arrhythmia. They lose their rhythm of the heart. all because less number of oxygen were able to get into the train in the first place. So this is the close correlation between the lungs and the heart. Something happens to the lungs, the heart is the first organ to scream out loud, and vice versa. In patients with a history of pulmonary or a cardiac illness, a COVID infection can complicate matters very, very quickly. There are ECG changes which are noted in patients with a cardiac illness who are getting infected by COVID. India is the cardiac capital of the world, and having worked in the cardiac field for the last 7.5 years, I can see a lot of cases where we have studied. In the last 1 month itself, I have at least spoken to at least 200-250 patients who, some of whom have been diagnosed with COVID, and the others were just afraid. In terms of percentage of people I've spoken to, out of 250 people, only 15 or 16 people had COVID. The others were just afraid. So it's nothing to be worried about as long as we know what we're doing. Moving on to the next slide, sir. This is important. This is where I come from. I come from a risk management background. In almost 26 years, I've been handling risk management for various organizations around the world. So the basic risk management theory or philosophy is understand the facts, learn as much facts about the situation, not looking at the media, not looking at the media reports, not looking at what people are saying, but the fact of the situation. Once you have understood the fact of the situation, understand our own truth of life. I am a cardiac patient, so my truth is, like it or not, cardiac. A friend of mine is very fit. His truth is fitness. Somebody who is 82 years old. I've got my father-in-law at 82. I've got my mom at 79. And these people, their truth is age. And that truth cannot be changed for whatever in this world. And once we know the fact, once we realize our truth, we need to define our defense strategy. Israel, for example, small country, surrounded by so-called enemies. That is the only reason Israel has gone to the level of defense and defense technologies that they are today. So as long as we know the facts, the truth, our protection strategy can be clear. That way, we can protect ourselves and our loved ones better. And as responsible people in the family, we'll have children, we'll have elderly, we'll have pregnant or post-pregnant people, women in the house or in the neighborhood. So we need to have a very clear strategy for all of us. So for our family, the strategy is, my mom does not go out anywhere. I go out only if it is very, very, very important. So poor thing, my sister has to run around wherever I could have gone. Or my nephew, for that matter. He's young, so he can run around. So understanding risk management is important. Moving on to the next one, slide number 8. Like it or not, we passed through January to March of 2020. Most of us did not even bother about the coronavirus. Ah, impacting some people, some country in the world is not going to come to India. Okay. Then news started spreading. Italy, Spain, Britain, parts of US, they started getting infected, and we started thinking it is infecting many people in many parts of the world. But you know what? Indians, we are blessed. We have Himalaya on one side, we have all the great rivers. So there was one side of people who said, we are holy and we will not get infected. Another side of people who said, you know what, we live in hardship. The average amount of illnesses that we see in a year is absolutely no comparison to anywhere else in this world. So we are immune. We don't get infected that fast. We have been living with malaria, with typhoid, with God knows what for the last 30, 50, 100 years. So it's not going to impact us. Suddenly by June, because also the numbers were very supportive of these theories. While the world was looking at a lakh, 500,000 people getting impacted, our total numbers were 10,000, 20,000, and we were going slow. By June, the world was burning. We were fine. We were not too much in bad soup. And things changed in July. It's here. We started seeing numbers. Numbers started growing in slums. Strangely, slums. And the common statement around was, I am okay. My family is okay. My friends and their families are okay. So it is really a socio-economic problem. It doesn't impact people who live in flats, who live in bungalows, or something of that sort. By August, everything changed. I know at least 20 people in my close circle who has had a COVID infection, who has lost somebody in COVID. And suddenly people have started taking notice. Now, if I have to rewind the clock slightly to June and July started seeing more infections, not because infections happened in July. Infections would have happened in May. That's how it came. And we'll come to that mistake, specific mistake. We'll be able to pinpoint that in just a few minutes. Moving on to the next slide. We're talking of scary numbers. We are really looking at numbers which kind of claim that we are the most infected country in the world today. We have beaten US, we have beaten Brazil. In fact, we have beaten a lot of European countries combined. Italy, which was once a hotspot, kind of getting control over what they're doing, which means they have done something right. Time to learn from them. Australia did something right, New Zealand did something right for a while, and then the numbers start growing. Last 6 weeks, Australia, particularly Victoria, has been in a stage of lockdown. In fact, they declared a state of emergency followed by a declaration of a state of disaster. Lockdown, and very strict lockdown, has been extended for another 2 weeks. I don't care if people lose jobs, if people go hungry or whatever, but we cannot let COVID spread around. That's the philosophy or the doctrine in some countries. On the other end, I don't care what happens to people as long as my economy is taken care of. Regardless, we'll see numbers. We'll see numbers thrown at us from different websites. I'm taking these numbers from COVID-19india.org, but I take them with a pinch of salt. We have been told that, you know what, some hospitals get money from WHO just by saying some patients are COVID positive while they are not. That may be true in some countries, but that is definitely not true for India. It is not WHO which is giving the money, it's the federal government or the health departments of that particular country or some of these countries which give money to the hospital to treat COVID patients. So greedy people are everywhere in this world. Take these numbers with a pinch of salt. Moving on to the next slide. What are the common mistakes? We are in phase 3 of the 4 phases of this presentation. I hope we are doing well on time. Naveen sir? Okay.
We can speed up.
Okay, perfect. So, one of the first things is we are not disciplined. All our solutions are in silos and we are basically lethargic. We'll quickly jump on to why I say so. Moving on to the next one. We are not disciplined because around mid-July, the use of masks were obsolete. People started walking around without masks. This was a high risk. It was an avoidable circumstance and we did not. We did nothing to stop it. There has been zero social distancing since March. Alcohol shops opened, people were clubbing. Memes and videos were sent from quarantine centers playing cricket and everything. All of it was avoidable. We didn't pay attention to it. We also were forced to work even when sick because of economic conditions. That is something that was unavoidable. We had no option. That is where the infection spread in the slums. Moving on. When we look at the next one, all our solutions have been in silos. I'll start with the Arogya Setu application. Nothing against it, but it works only when everyone is honest. It has a series of questions. People have to answer those questions. And if one person who is asymptomatic answers, I'm fine, I'm all green, he walks around, he's spreading the virus to 20 people. So Arogya Setu could have worked only if everyone were honest about themselves. Now, many locations, many organizations have made mandatory temperature checks. You go to a Domino's, you go to a bank, you will check your temperature. But temperature is just not enough. It is a non-specific biomarker. When I say non-specific, the presence of temperature does not mean that the person has coronavirus, and the absence of fever does not mean that the person is free from coronavirus. Fever is a natural body response to an alien organism within the body. Some kids get fever when they get the polio vaccination or something like that. Some anatomies, some bodies are made in civilian format. Anyone can come settle down in a house. Whereas some others are in military format. The moment a new organism comes in to settle down, they will have a questioning mode. And that questioning mode is fever. There has been a lack of governance as well. How many travelers were checked that they are following home quarantine? Inconsistent analysis is the second biggest problem that India has faced. The first one is no central data repository. Because we continue to check infected and recovered statistics. There is a much larger number, the asymptomatic crowd. They're hanging around. They're free electrons in this world. And these free electrons cause the biggest problems. Quickly moving on to the next set of common mistakes is the next slide is lethargy. Substandard masks manufactured and sold. Paper napkins. You won't believe this. Paper napkins were used instead of filters in 3-ply mask. The blue color mask that you see, fabric on one end, fabric on the other end, and it had a mask filter. A filter of at least 28 to 30 GSM was to be used there. Because filters were not available, they started using paper napkins. There's no one to check. Used masks were washed and resold. Because many people started throwing the mask casually on the road. Rack pickers would pick up the mask, wash it in bulk, and sell it again. 5 ka do, 5 ka do, 50 ka do. It hurts to accept it, but people in power were busy making money. I know at least 100, 500 government officials who had become distributors of masks. Lethargy and habits. Lethargy of throwing things around and habits of greed, of making as much money as possible. That was the biggest problem. Moving on to the next one. I really don't think I need to explain this further. The government of India has had many balls in the air when it comes to COVID. The infrastructure for health was a problem. GDP started coming down the elevator. We had a problem of freedom for citizens. People wanted to go out. They were ready to fight. We had trust deficit with our neighbors who tried to take advantage of the situation. And the biggest of all, publicity and media. Everyone wanted to represent their story in their own language. Quickly moving on. Few more slides to go before we move on to the last part. This is the last part actually. What we do in our solution is we measure comprehensive vitals which are COVID-19 specific. We analyze them daily. We analyze them at least once a day when people take a test, and we do a trend analysis. We notify people when something goes out of the ordinary. And because we notify and we detect conditions, we are able to get people treated before the situation escalates itself. So the common question that we wanted to ask right from the start, and we have been asking through this solution, is when would you like to go to the expert, to a doctor for advice? When your SpO2 is 92, 93, or it has dropped to 85 and you're gasping for breath. Once we answer this question, the utility of this technology, the utility of this solution is very apparent. Moving on to the next one. Now, this is a gentleman who goes on by the name of @AirwayCam on Twitter. He is an emergency doctor, pulmonary specialist, and is obsessed with cleanliness or keeping the airways clean. He made a statement sometime in March, April, is we are fighting in the red zone. We are fighting when the people have got bigger problems, bigger complications. if we can fight in the blue zone, which is anywhere between 97 to 90, where SpO2 is between 97 to 90, we'll be able to save patients quicker. Our recovery status, our numbers will look much better. And the link that I have there, and people are free to go and check the link later, is a post that I had done sometime in May, June, where we are not looking at the right numbers. We need to look at the numbers before patients actually get infected, because there are many who get infected but recover from their own immunity systems. Moving on to the next one. COVID does not kill, but if we delay treatment, we cannot generally save the patient. The faster we treat, the better or the cheaper. So as the along the x-axis, the SpO2 values start reducing, and at some point in time, you can take treatment at home. After a certain point, you have to go to a clinic, then to a hospital, and finally to an ICU. It changes for different people. Older people or people with comorbidities tend to go to a hospital earlier because they suffer from other complications. This is typically for somebody who is fit. And the cost of treatment goes from 0.5 in the early stages to about 10-15 lakhs, depending on which hospital, celebrity status, available beds, and so on. So it's very important that we get identified, treated at an early stage. Moving on to the next one is a screenshot of some of our administration portals, dashboards. So we have dashboard that looks at compliance. How many people have registered onto our system? How many have got themselves tested? So there is a delta between number of people tested versus number of people registered. So we can give them reminders. Please get yourself tested. Then how many tested versus how many in an alert condition? How many in an amber alert? How many in a red alert? Amber alert are those where we really don't need a test now, but we need to monitor them. Red alert is the next stop is to go to a COVID test center and get themselves tested. We hope nothing is wrong, but it's better to get ourselves tested. Screen 2 is for the last 1 week, what we have seen, how many people tested, continuous streaming analysis going on. And screen 3 on the top right is what we have seen in the last 6 hours. How many people registered, how many people tested, how many people coming alerts, and so on. And this is continuously updated. So imagine you are the part of the management committee for your society. You'll be able to see all these basic statistics for your society. If you are the municipal commissioner, health commissioner for a particular city or a part of the city, you will see these statistics for everyone who is in that part of the city. If you are for the state, you see this for the state. And if you are for the country, health minister of the country, then you will see all this information for the entire country. That's the beauty. That's the rolling up of information from the smallest of the levels to the highest of the levels, so that uniform data analysis is performed. The data is continuously analyzed for temperature or oxygen saturation anomalies. Moving on, this is the most important part. Say next slide, please. Now there are multiple ripple waves, and this is part of our advanced contact tracing. So the individual M's that you see are installed MIOK devices. The concentric circle, the innermost concentric circle is day 1, yesterday. The red circle, which is the next outside circle, is day 2, that is day -2, -3, -4, and so on. And these are the different devices which are installed around the city. There could be one in Garuda Mall if you're in Bangalore, or Mantri Mall in Bangalore and so on. As we move on to the next slide, we identify one user who has been identified with a red alert. Let's say his or her oxygen saturation is 86. Very dangerous. He is asymptomatic, but he is asymptomatic positive. Quickly moving on to the next one. What we have now seen is the individual red boxes that you see around the M are boxes where the same user has tested themselves in the last 6 days or 7 days. So it could be he was in Garuda Mall yesterday, he was in Lal Bagh the day before, he had gone to the Citibank MG Road office 4 days ago, and he was at the airport to receive one of his friends 6 days ago. So automatically all these locations now get flagged within our systems. They don't actually get a red box around them, but they get flagged. Moving on to the next slide. Let's say day 2, the person was at MG Road Citibank. Day -2, the person was at MG Road Citibank. All the people who have used the device after this guy, they get a notification saying one person who has used this device at the time after which you used it was found to be positive. We want you to be extra careful. These are the 5 things we want you to do. The 6th thing is, in case you still feel uneasy, please go to a doctor. This is advanced contact tracing, something that we are not dependent on people to answer a set of questions. So this is more data driven and more compliance oriented. Moving on to the next one. It's a snapshot of what our solution offers. We measure 3 key parameters using a device. We measure 3 key parameters. One is body temperature, the other is oxygen saturation, and the third is the heart rate or the pulse rate. All this information, along with the user information, the location information, and the device information, is sent to our application on our cloud hosted servers. An intelligent engine checks for compliance as the user tested themselves daily, 1 test per user per day. What is the community health status? The community can be a house, community can be an apartment complex, community can be an office or anything. Is there a containment zone probability? Are there many people in a locality who are getting infected? Then is there an infection zone notification, which is what we saw as advanced contact tracing? And finally, trend observation and notification engine. So we look at the trend of the user and we send notifications to go and get themselves tested. With this, I open for questions. Next slide, please.
Wonderful, Narayanan, Krishnan, for while everybody else is looking at the problem, you're looking at how to solve and how do you trace. So congratulations and best wishes. Is this product already in the market, or is it to be launched? What is the status of this product?
With your best wishes and the blessings of the Lord, I'm using this forum to officially launch this product.
Wow, fantastic, and let God's grace and blessings be there, and best wishes we all join, whoever is there here and listening and joining later. So everybody's wishes are with you. More than that, God's wishes are there. We need such solutions to defend from COVID-19. So congratulations and best wishes.
Thank you so much, sir.
And
Mr. Narayanan, Naveen, can I ask him a question? This is Aarti from Anna University Incubation Center. I basically I have basic research in biotechnology, and my students have also do such kind of innovative products. I also worked in biomedical engineering, and we also tried to do such things when I was working previously in a research background. So, how do you state this is different from any app that would do the same data analysis and give you a graph-like thing? It also promises to assess your temperature, heart rate, SpO2, and also the various other cholesterol levels, diabetes levels. There are few other apps that promise to do the same. How do you see that your product is more accurate, precise, or more unique than those apps?
Wonderful. Let me give you a small example. Of course, we can have more detailed discussions later on, and I'll share my numbers with Naveen sir. When it comes to thermometry, it is clear that the best reading, the most accurate reading, is from a cavity in the body. So it can be an oral cavity, ear, armpit, or even rectal. The next best is surface contact. Having a surface contact eliminates the involvement of the environment and gives accurate results. Our temperature device, or our temperature thermometry part of the device, is compliant to a global standard called ASTM. I repeat, A for Alpha, S for Sierra, T for Tiger, M for Monkey. E1112 2018 standards. That mandates that temperature readings cannot be more than 0.1 to 0.1 degrees Celsius or 0.2 degrees Fahrenheit from temperatures measured from cavity-based readings. So using the right sensors are the foundation for guaranteeing accuracy. Any normal mobile phone or something cannot measure temperature to that level of accuracy. So you will always have to balance out accuracy and therefore cost versus low accuracy, cheap, and quick or convenient.
Got it. Thank you.
One of the questions that has come up is this individuals who need to have this product use this, or is it who's the customer?
We initially decided, or we initially planned to have this at offices, but not everyone goes to an office. Quite a lot of people who just don't leave home at all, retired people and the really vulnerable class. So in addition to offices, we then decided to have it at apartment complexes at the main gates. But we realized after we did our first prototype about a month ago, we realized that some families would not want to get their parents or elders to touch a device where 100 others have touched it. So our current customer population includes households. We just buy one device for the entire house. Group of households. So if you have 2-3 neighbors, you can buy one device for that 2-3 neighbors population. Or you can buy one for an entire apartment complex, not one, maybe more than one, depending on how many people come in. Then have one for offices. When I say one, it could be based on number of people. Every hotel, every resort must have one, because that is where people start going and you interact with the staff there. And if it can be installed at airports, railway stations and so on, where there is mass transit, you will be able to check more people at the same time. The objective is to check as many people as many times in a day.
How different is it from using a pulse oximeter? As against that, what are the benefits here?
The only difference from a pulse oximeter is the ability to store, analyze the data on a daily basis. If somebody can have enough discipline to check themselves using a pulse oximeter, write that on a piece of paper and do that once or twice every day, they don't need this device. The problem is we are not disciplined enough.
Can it map to a particular person, or is it at a region level?
Every person gets to install an app on their phone, and an OTP is sent to the app. Because of the OTP, we are able to identify who got themselves tested and store the information for the person. So while the community uses the device, the data is stored per person.
Okay, fantastic.
And also, many people may not have a smartphone or may not have a phone at all. The domestic help that comes to our house, she carries a phone. It's not a smartphone. It's a small helps making calls and so on. So I can actually have dependents registered on my phone. My daughter, who is 4 years old, she may not have a phone. So I'll have to register my daughter as my dependent, not only on my phone, but also on the phone of my wife.
Interesting questions following. Aarti is asking, is it not going to be psychologically affecting when you have to go keep frequently checking, one? And then how does it intimate the person if in case they are asymptomatic, but there is it's a positive asymptomatic case? How does it indicate to the person?
First thing first, let me address the second question, which is there is a notification within the application that the user gets, and as soon as the user sees it, our central application gets a confirmation that the user has seen the message. So someone has seen the message. And then we start tracking if the person has taken a test or something. And we constantly send this information back to the user. And if the user is registered along with his or her family, then we let their family members know that there is a possibility. We don't say it's a certainty, say there is a possibility, and this possibility has to be ruled out with a COVID test. And when it comes to mental stress and agony, I would rather have this agony than having to worry about, I'm suddenly feeling breathless. I don't know what it is. I don't want to go to a doctor because I don't know. I don't trust the doctor's results. And it is that indecisiveness which is causing people worry.
Yeah, sure. And then, typically, this is a new product, and the requirement is big in terms of wanting it to be tested. So how do you plan to manufacture? Is it made in India?
It is made in India, designed in India. Only Indians have worked on the design of this product, and it will be manufactured in ISO 13485 certified location in Mysore.
Okay.
We have applied for 4 key certifications. The first one is US FDA. The second one is CE for Europe. The third is ISO 13485, which is for manufacturing of medical devices. This looks at accuracy and consistency. And the fourth one is CDSCO, or the Indian version of the FDA. We are sure that we'll get all these four by the 15th of October.
And do you plan to make this for India only, or is this a global product?
This will be a global product. We are already getting inquiries from Middle East, Europe, South America, and Southeast Asia, particularly Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing which is required, and prevention is better than cure. So if there is, and also detection, early detection would really be helpful. That's what your graphs also showed, especially from the cost side. Today, I think more than the fear of in being infected by corona, the cost of infection is what bothers a lot more, and the uncertainty, right? With that, I think such products which could help detect early and save lives, at the same time save cost for the kind of volume of people who need such assistance is big. So we wish you the very best, and I'm sure people should benefit out of it. Thank you so much for being on the webinar series, Innovation Insight series. And thanks to all our partners who have been support to make this happen as Innovation Insights. And we are all drawing a lot of insights and inspiration. And as I said, you as a person, Narayanan Krishnan, yourself is a great inspiration and a survivor, big heart. And now you want to help many people save their lives. That's again a fantastic thing, and best wishes to your initiative. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners who've joined in, and I'm sure you're inspired and you're taking some insights out of the journey of what Narayanan Krishnan and his team has been involved in creating this product. And behalf of all of you, we wishing them again a safe life, and stay safe, take care. And there are new devices coming our way to help us all live a better life. Thank you so much. See you. Good night and good morning wherever you are joining from.